What if everything you've been told about saving money is completely wrong? Most people spend their entire lives following the 10% savings rule, working hard, cutting expenses, putting money aside every single month, only to wake up one day and realize it was never enough. That one realization changes everything, and by the end of this video, you will never look at your savings the same way again. Let's go back to the beginning. The 10% savings rule has been around for decades, and honestly, it sounds simple enough. Just save 10% of whatever you earn, stay consistent, and you will be financially secure. Almost every financial advisor, every money book, and every budgeting app will tell you the exact same thing. It feels safe, it feels logical, and for a very long time, millions of people believed it without question. The problem is that nobody actually stops to ask whether this rule still makes sense in today's world. The rule was created in a completely different era, an era where inflation was predictable, where jobs were stable, and where the cost of living did not increase faster than people's salaries. That world no longer exists, and yet here we are, still following the same old advice as if nothing has changed around us. Fast forward to 2026, and the financial landscape looks nothing like it did even 10 years ago. Groceries cost more, rent has skyrocketed, fuel prices keep climbing, and everyday expenses that used to feel manageable now feel like a constant pressure on your wallet. People are earning more on paper, but somehow, they feel broker than ever before, and that contradiction deserves a serious conversation. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most finance channels will not tell you: saving 10% of your income in 2026 might actually be giving you a false sense of security. You think you are doing the right thing, you feel responsible, you feel like you are ahead of the game, but the real numbers tell a very different story. And those numbers are exactly what we are going to break down together in this video. The 10% savings rule did not just appear out of thin air, it actually has a very specific origin, and understanding where it came from helps you understand why it is so outdated today. The rule was popularized by George Clason in his 1926 book, The Richest Man in Babylon, where the main lesson was simple: pay yourself first by keeping one coin out of every 10 you earn. It was revolutionary advice for its time, and for the 1920s, it genuinely worked beautifully. Back in those days, the average worker had very few financial obligations beyond basic food, shelter, and clothing. There were no credit card bills, no subscription services, no student loans eating up a chunk of every paycheck, and no smartphones with apps constantly tempting you to spend. Life was simpler, expenses were fewer, and saving 10% actually left a meaningful amount of money sitting in your pocket at the end of every month without much sacrifice at all. The rule carried forward through the decades because it was easy to remember and easy to teach. Financial advisors loved it because it gave people a concrete starting point, something actionable and measurable that did not require a finance degree to understand. Schools started teaching it, parents passed it down to their children, and it became one of those pieces of advice that society accepted as universal truth without ever stopping to challenge it seriously. But here is where the story gets interesting. The world of 1926 and the world of 2026 are separated by exactly 100 years, and in those 100 years, absolutely everything about money has changed. Inflation has compounded relentlessly, the cost of education has exploded, healthcare expenses have multiplied, and housing prices in most major cities have reached levels that previous generations could never have imagined in their wildest dreams. So when you blindly follow a rule that was written for a completely different economic reality, you are essentially using a 100-year-old map to navigate a city that has been rebuilt from scratch. The landmarks are gone, the roads have changed, and if you keep trusting that old map, you are going to get lost. And in personal finance, getting lost does not just cost you time, it costs you your entire financial future. Let's stop talking theory and start talking real numbers, because this is where most people get a genuine shock. If you are earning $3,000 a month, which is close to the average salary in many countries, your 10% savings comes out to just $300. That $300 sounds okay on paper until you actually look at what life costs in 2026. Rent alone in most mid-sized cities will eat anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500 of your monthly income without blinking. Then you add groceries, utilities, transportation, phone bills, and maybe one streaming service, and suddenly that $300 feels like a cruel joke. You are saving money on one hand while your expenses silently destroy your financial stability on the other. Now here is the part that truly stings: inflation in 2026 is not your grandfather's inflation. The purchasing power of $300 today is significantly lower than what $300 could do even 5 years ago. Every month you save that amount, the real value of what you are setting aside is quietly shrinking before it even gets a chance to grow. Let's also talk about emergencies, because life does not care about your savings plan. A single medical bill, a car breakdown, or an unexpected job loss can completely wipe out months of disciplined 10% savings in one single moment. Financial experts recommend having at least 3 to 6 months of expenses saved as an emergency fund, and at $300 a month, building that cushion alone would take you years. The math is not working in your favor, and that is not your fault. It is the fault of advice that was never updated for the reality you are actually living in. You are not failing the 10% rule, the 10% rule is failing you, and the sooner you accept that uncomfortable truth, the sooner you can start building a strategy that actually moves the needle on your financial life. Inflation is one of those words that gets thrown around constantly in news headlines, political debates, and financial discussions, but very few people actually understand what it is doing to their savings on a deep and personal level. It is not just about prices going up at the grocery store, it is about the silent, invisible force that is steadily eating your money from the inside out. And in 2026, that force is stronger than it has been in a very long time. Here is a simple way to think about it: imagine you worked incredibly hard, saved $10,000 over 3 years, and felt genuinely proud of that achievement. Now imagine that by the time you actually need that money, it can only buy what $8,500 could have bought when you first started saving it. You did everything right, you stayed disciplined, you made sacrifices, and inflation still punished you quietly without asking your permission. The official inflation numbers that governments report are actually quite conservative compared to what everyday people experience in real life. The things that take up the biggest portions of a normal person's budget, housing, food, healthcare, and education, tend to inflate much faster than the official average rate suggests. So the gap between what the government tells you and what you actually feel in your wallet is often much wider than you would expect. This is exactly why keeping your savings in a regular bank account in 2026 is almost financially irresponsible by itself. Most standard savings accounts offer interest rates that are far below the actual inflation rate, which means your money is technically growing in number but shrinking in real value every single day it sits there. You are running on a treadmill and calling it progress because the machine is moving under your feet. The people who are actually winning financially in 2026 are not the ones saving harder, they are the ones who understood inflation early and made sure their money was growing faster than inflation could destroy it. Saving is just the first step, and if you stop there, you are only halfway through a race that requires you to finish the entire track to actually win anything meaningful. Every year, millions of workers celebrate when their employer hands them a salary raise, and honestly, that excitement is completely understandable because it feels like real progress. But here is the question nobody asks in that moment of celebration: is your raise actually making you richer, or is it just barely keeping up with how expensive life has already become around you? This concept has a name in economics, it is called a real wage, and it measures your salary not in raw numbers but in actual purchasing power after inflation is accounted for. If you got a 5% raise this year but inflation ran at 6%, you did not get a raise at all, you actually took a quiet, invisible pay cut that never showed up on any official document. Your bank account looks better but your financial reality got slightly worse. The situation becomes even more painful when you factor in lifestyle inflation, which is the very natural human tendency to upgrade your spending every time your income goes up. You earn a little more, so you move to a slightly nicer apartment, eat at slightly better restaurants, and buy a slightly newer phone, and before you know it, that raise has completely disappeared into a more expensive version of the same life you were already living. This is the trap that keeps highly educated, hardworking, well-paid professionals completely broke well into their 40s and 50s. It is not about how much you earn, it is about the growing gap between what comes in and what silently leaks out every single month without you ever consciously deciding to spend it. That gap is where financial freedom either gets built or gets destroyed. The 10% savings rule was never designed to survive salary increases, lifestyle inflation, and real wage stagnation all happening at the same time. And in 2026, all three of these forces are hitting simultaneously, which is exactly why so many people who look successful on the outside are quietly struggling on the inside with zero real financial safety net beneath them. Now that we have torn apart the 10% rule completely, it is time to talk about what actually works in today's financial reality. The honest answer is that most serious financial experts in 2026 recommend a minimum savings rate of 20% to 30% for anyone who genuinely wants to build real wealth. That number sounds scary at first, but once you understand the logic behind it, it starts to make complete sense. The 20% rule is not arbitrary, it is built around the actual math of modern living expenses, inflation rates, and retirement needs. When you save 20%, you are creating enough breathing room to cover emergencies, invest for the future, and still maintain a decent quality of life. Anything below that threshold in today's economy is essentially just treading water without actually moving forward. Now before you panic, nobody is saying you need to jump from 10% to 30% overnight because that kind of sudden shift is unrealistic and unsustainable. The smarter approach is to increase your savings rate by just 1% every single month until you gradually reach a healthier target. Small consistent increases are far more powerful than dramatic changes that you abandon after 3 weeks. There is also a smarter way to think about what you do with the money you save, because saving and storing are two completely different things. Saving money in a low-interest account is just the starting point. The real goal is to make sure that saved money is actively working and growing faster than inflation can shrink it. That distinction between saving and investing is where most people's financial journey either takes off or stays permanently stuck. The people who are genuinely thriving financially in 2026 have one thing in common: they treated their savings rate as seriously as they treated their rent payment. It was non-negotiable, it came first before any other expense, and it increased consistently as their income grew over time. That simple but disciplined mindset is the actual secret behind every financial success story you have ever heard. Saving money is responsible, but investing that money is where actual wealth gets built in the real world. The difference between someone who saves and someone who invests is the difference between standing still and actually moving toward financial freedom. In 2026, if your money is not growing faster than inflation, it is silently losing value every single day. Think about it this way: $10,000 sitting in a savings account for 10 years might become $11,000 with basic interest. That same $10,000 invested wisely in index funds or diversified assets could realistically grow to $20,000 or even $25,000 in the same time frame. That gap between those two numbers represents years of your life and thousands of hours of hard work. The most powerful force in personal finance is compound interest, and the earlier you start investing, the more aggressively it works in your favor. Even small amounts invested consistently over long periods of time produce results that feel almost impossible when you first see them on paper. Time is genuinely your most valuable financial asset, and every month you delay investing is a month of compounding you can never get back. The good news is that investing in 2026 has never been more accessible to ordinary people than it is right now. You do not need a financial advisor, a large sum of money, or a finance degree to get started with basic index fund investing today. Apps, platforms, and low-cost brokerages have completely removed the barriers that used to keep everyday people out of the investing world entirely. Understanding what to do with your money is only half the battle, the other half is recognizing the silent mistakes that are quietly destroying your financial progress without you even realizing it. Most people who struggle financially are not struggling because they are lazy or irresponsible, they are struggling because nobody ever taught them what these mistakes actually look like in real life. And the most dangerous mistakes are always the ones that feel completely normal and reasonable while you are making them. The first and most common mistake is saving whatever is left at the end of the month instead of saving first and spending what remains. This single habit difference completely separates people who build wealth from people who always wonder where their money went. When saving is the last priority, it will always lose to the 100 small expenses that feel urgent and justified in the moment but add up to nothing meaningful over time. The second major mistake is keeping all your savings in one place, usually a basic bank account, without any real strategy behind it. People feel safe seeing a number grow in their account, but that false sense of security stops them from taking the next necessary step of actually putting that money to work. Diversification is not just for advanced investors, it is a basic principle that every person saving any amount of money needs to understand and apply. The third mistake is not having a clear and specific goal attached to your savings, because saving without a target is like driving without a destination. When you know exactly what you are saving for, whether it is a house, retirement, your child's education, or financial independence, every savings decision becomes easier and every sacrifice feels justified. Vague goals produce vague results, and vague results produce frustration that eventually makes people give up entirely. The fourth mistake, and perhaps the most painful one, is letting lifestyle inflation absorb every single income increase you ever receive. Every raise, every bonus, and every side income opportunity gets immediately converted into a better car, a nicer apartment, or more frequent dining out, and the savings rate stays exactly the same no matter how much the income grows. Breaking this cycle requires a level of intentional self-awareness that most people never develop because nobody ever specifically told them this pattern was happening to them. Everything we have discussed so far means nothing if you walk away without a clear and actionable plan that you can realistically start today. The goal was never to make you feel hopeless about your finances, it was to wake you up to a reality that most people ignore until it is far too late to comfortably fix. Awareness without action is just anxiety, and you deserve better than that. The very first thing you need to do is sit down and calculate your actual savings rate right now, not the one you think you have but the real number based on last month's income and expenses. Most people are genuinely shocked when they see the real percentage staring back at them because the number is almost always lower than they assumed. That honest starting point is the foundation everything else gets built upon. The second step is to automate your savings completely so that the decision is never left to your willpower in a weak moment. Set up an automatic transfer that moves your target savings amount out of your account on the exact same day your salary arrives every month. When the money is gone before you can see it and touch it, your brain stops counting it as available to spend. The third step is to aggressively look for ways to increase your income rather than only focusing on cutting expenses, because there is a hard limit to how much you can cut but no real ceiling on how much you can earn. A side skill, a freelance project, or even selling in used items can add meaningful income that goes directly toward closing the gap between where you are and where you need to be financially. You started this video thinking the 10% savings rule was your financial safety net, and now you know the truth. It was never enough to actually protect you in the world we are living in today. The rule was built for a different era, a different economy, and a completely different set of financial challenges that simply do not exist anymore. Knowing this changes everything about how you approach your money going forward. The people who will thrive financially in 2026 and beyond are not the ones with the highest salaries or the most expensive degrees, they are the ones who decided to stop following outdated advice and start building a strategy that matches their actual reality. That decision costs nothing, requires no special skills, and can be made at any income level starting from today. The only thing standing between you and a genuinely stronger financial future is the choice to actually begin. Every single step we discussed today, saving more, investing early, avoiding lifestyle inflation, and automating your finances, is completely achievable for an ordinary person with an ordinary income and a genuine desire to do better. You do not need to be perfect, you do not need to start big, and you do not need to have it all figured out before you take the first move. You just need to start somewhere real and stay consistent long enough for the results to show up. If this video gave you even one idea that changes how you think about your savings, then share it with someone you care about because this is exactly the kind of information that most people never get access to until it is too late. Drop a comment below telling me your current savings rate and what your new target is going to be. I read every single comment and I genuinely want to know where you are starting from.